Everything is falling. Literally everything around you. From the chair you're sitting on to the ceiling above you to the building you're inside. Even the earth itself is falling towards the sun. This constant fall is what we experience as gravity.
But what if one day it just turned off? What if gravity stopped working?
It sounds crazy, right? But it's actually a real possibility.
According to NASA, it's theoretically possible that our planet's gravitational pull could suddenly vanish. And while it's unlikely to happen anytime soon, it is worth considering what would occur if this did take place.
So here are 13 things that would happen if gravity stopped working for just 5 seconds.
Would anything actually happen?
If gravity stopped working for just 5 seconds, there would be a lot of action happening around you, although not necessarily the action you'd expect.
First off, people wouldn't suddenly get sucked into outer space. Instead, they'd find themselves lifted a few meters of their feet, along with every other object not firmly secured to its surroundings.
This is because of a concept known as inertia, which states that an object at rest stays at rest and an object in motion stays in motion with the same speed and in the same direction unless acted upon by an unbalanced force.
In other words, everything would continue doing what it was already doing, including floating upwards.
This also means that cars wouldn't suddenly stop working either.
They might momentarily lose traction, perhaps even lifting slightly or slowly drifting upward, depending on their speed and the angle of the road. Even more interestingly, any planes that were already in the air wouldn't simply keep flying indefinitely. In fact, they'd quickly start losing altitude as they no longer have gravity pulling them down, which means they wouldn't be able to stay airborne.
It'd be like trying to fly a kite with a broken string. Depending on the plane's altitude and speed, it might just drift aimlessly in the sky, or it could flip and fall out of the air.
But wait, there's more. Tall skyscrapers, bridges and other man-made structures that weren't designed to handle such an unexpected shift could shake or even snap. This is because gravity has a significant impact on the structural integrity of buildings and other large constructions. When gravity vanished, these structures would essentially be in free fall, causing them to wobble precariously.
The next big thing you'd notice is that water would lift, not just in your glass or the ocean, but in your body too.
Every drop of water would rise up and away from Earth's surface. Imagine a wave of floating water surging over cities and countries. Boats would float higher out of the water and eventually drift away into the sky.
The water in your body would also move upward, disrupting all sorts of internal processes and functions.
Speaking of the atmosphere, it wouldn't remain static either. Air, like everything else, would start floating upward.
Eventually, the atmosphere would begin expanding outward, pushing against the vacuum of space and creating an expanding bubble around the Earth.
So now we know what would happen. But what would happen when gravity came back? Since it takes about 5 seconds for the signal of gravity change to reach from Earth to space and back, we can assume that during those 5 seconds, the Earth would continue to expand into space.
Then once gravity kicked back in, everything would come crashing down hard. People who only floated a few meters up could suffer serious injuries or even die from the sudden impact with the ground.
Infrastructure would suffer tremendous damage. Roads, bridges, buildings, and other structures would be destroyed or severely compromised. Planes would plummet from the sky and crash into the ground or into each other. Cars would slam into buildings, crashing through windows and collapsing entire floors. And the oceans would surge back down, causing catastrophic flooding. In short, the world as we know it would cease to exist. Now, let's imagine a scenario where gravity returned to normal after just 5 seconds. What would happen then?
Well, first, people would find themselves suddenly plummeting towards the ground.
Those who hadn't floated very high might feel a brief moment of weightlessness before gravity yanked them back down.
Others who had risen several meters would experience a bone-crushing sensation as their bodies were slammed back into the earth.
Cars would smash into each other, buildings and the sides of the roads.
Planes would nosedive towards the ground, unable to regain altitude without gravity.
Skyscrapers would shudder violently, some potentially collapsing entirely.
And waves of water would crash over coastlines, surging back down to the sea.
As you can probably imagine, global panic would ensue.
People would be left wondering if they had just experienced a glitch in nature, an alien intervention, or something else entirely.
But amidst the chaos, there would be one big question on everyone's mind. Will it happen again? While the sudden disappearance of gravity for even a few seconds would cause widespread devastation and panic, it does make us wonder how we'd fare if it happened again.
Could we even survive such an ordeal? Gravity is a force that we rely on every single day, even though we may not always notice it. It keeps us grounded literally and helps regulate our planet's climate and weather patterns.
Without it, life as we know it simply wouldn't be possible.
In fact, it's thanks to gravity that when you jump, you come back down to Earth, that rain falls from the sky instead of floating away into outer space, and that the moon stays in orbit around the Earth instead of drifting off into the vastness of space. Gravity is a force that brings things down. It keeps us grounded literally and helps regulate our planet's climate and weather patterns.
Without it, life as we know it simply wouldn't be possible. However, while we generally take gravity for granted, it's important to remember that it's a force that can also be dangerous. From falling objects to earthquakes and landslides, gravity plays a role in many of the disasters that can strike our planet. And in extreme cases, it can even cause entire planets to collide. So what would happen if gravity worked in reverse? If the force that pulls us down suddenly started pushing us up, the consequences would be nothing short of catastrophic. Buildings and other structures would collapse as they were no longer held down by gravity. Roads would buckle and break apart, sending cars and other vehicles floating into the sky, and the very fabric of our planet would start to tear apart.
Not only would gravity working in reverse cause physical damage, but it would also throw our planet's systems into chaos. The climate and weather patterns that we rely on would cease to exist,
and the Earth's atmosphere would be thrown into disarray.
But perhaps the most terrifying part of this scenario is that there is no telling how long this reversal would last.
Would it be just a few seconds or a few hours?
No one knows.
What's clear is that if gravity ever did flip, we'd need to be prepared for the worst. We'd need to have a plan in place to deal with the aftermath and help pick up the pieces. Fortunately, we don't need to worry about this happening anytime soon.
Gravity isn't likely to flip anytime soon, if ever.
But it's still worth thinking about what would happen just in case. After all, it's not every day that you think about what would happen if the laws of physics changed. Now, if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to leave us a comment with your thoughts.
Also, if you want to see more content like this on our channel, please don't forget to subscribe.
And with that said, here's another video you might enjoy watching. Next up, what if time froze for 5 seconds?